Welcome back to Track from Scratch. In this episode, we're going to be covering track layout. We're going to be taking the original idea that I built over the first 4 episodes and using that to lay a solid foundation that can then help us towards finishing the rest of the track. It's going to be a bit of a shorter one, but I'm going to be sharing some useful tips and tricks for building simple track layouts that will actually help you make progress towards finishing the track rather than just starting from left to right and hoping that everything comes together. This one's a super simple hack for all of you who love starting tracks and never actually finishing them. I know there's plenty of you out there, so let's jump in. All right, back in the project, let's have a listen to what we've got so far and then we'll start getting into the track layout stuff. Cool. So that's the basic idea, fully rebuilt from this one to the left here that I started with. So first thing I'm going to do is completely get rid of this, bring this clap back here just so I can bring everything else back to the very first beat of the project. So now we got everything at the start of the project. So now we're going to work on getting a basic track layout down. And when I say track layout, I mean just a very basic intro, break, first drop, second break, second drop. You can add the locators as well. That's what a lot of beginners do just to get that basic layout. I'm not going to bother with that because I can kind of just do that with the kick and bass and percussion. Normally when I'm doing this kind of stuff, when I'm making my own tracks, I'll get it done even earlier than like where we are now. I'll usually just have the basic percussion and the kick and bass down, and then I'll just use that to essentially lay out the whole track. And the reason why we want to do that is because we want that end goal to then start filling out the rest of the track. So even if we just have the kick and bass and percussion, that's enough to give us our intro, our first drop and our second drop, and then you just leave the breaks empty in between. And then it's just a matter of going back through the track with a fine-tooth comb and adding in all of those details. So you might start with the intro and jump into the synths and then add in all those main synths, then put your main synths or ideas into the break, put them into the first drop, the second break, the second drop, and the outro. And then you'll go back through again and really start to sew every section together with the effects, Atmos, sweeps and impacts, that kind of stuff. So normally when I'm making a track, I'll get this idea down, then I'll do my sort of first pass through, very broad stroke kind of stuff with just the kick and bass and the percussion, making that layout. And then I'll go through a second time, adding in all the main ideas into each section. And then I'll go through a third time to really bring everything together and add in that finer detail. So let's do that first pass process with the kick and bass. So opening up the kick and bass group here, I'll take my kick, so I've got the layered kick there. Right now it's 4 bars. I'm going to do a 32 bar intro, so I can copy that over. Now I've got 8 bars, and then I just need to copy this over 4 times. 1, 2, 3. So now, well, 3 times, you know, about 4 copies of that. So now we've got a 32 bar intro. I like to leave my intros a little bit longer just to give the person DJing the track a little bit of options when mixing the track in. So they could start the track from the start and then slowly mix it in from there, because this first half of the intro, I'm not going to have too much going on. And then this is where I'll sort of start bringing in some main ideas. So it's always good to think about the person mixing the track when they're DJing as well, not just like as you're producing it. Just be mindful of like where the sort of more DJ friendly section is, which is going to be this section, and then the main section will sort of be more here. So you want to actually take the time to add in all your detail here. So that's the intro there. Then what I'm going to do for this track, it's going to be a very basic layout. I'm going to leave a 16 bar break, and then I'm going to have the first drop there. So here is sort of going to be your little break, and then you'll probably have your build up there. We'll just see what happens when we start actually making the track. I'm going to go through section by section in the following episodes. And then I'll go another 32 bar drop. So I can copy this or highlight this, hold down Option, and just drag that over there. So I'm leaving that 16 bar break, and then 32 bar drop here. Then I'll highlight this again, and I'll leave an even bigger break for the second half. So you can go like 32 or even 48. So you can do either or. If you want to have like a super long build up, maybe I might actually leave it like that, and then we can change it later on if we want to. So you can kind of use this section to transition from the end of this drop into the break. Sorry, into the break here, and then you can use this as your main section of the break, and then you can have a nice long 16 bar build up into the second drop. And then I'll leave the second drop as 32 bars, and then what I'll do is I'll just extend this out another 16 bars for the outro, just like that. And then because this bass is just looping, we'll leave that. So this will be the outro section here. If the DJ wants to mix into the next track, they can do that here. Of course, they have the option to do it anywhere in the second drop. Then what I'm going to do is take that main percussion. So just focusing on this group here for the moment. We'll leave these out of here. And I'll have the shaker loop pretty much going all the way through the intro, just add a little bit of depth. So right now we'll just have, I'll solo that shaker and the kick and bass. Basically for the intro there. Then I'll have this rolling closed hat come in maybe 8 bars in. So we got 8 bars of kick, bass, and shaker. Then we're progressing on to adding the rolling hi-hat. And then in the main section of the intro, so this is going to have like a lot more synths and other elements going on there, we can bring in the open hi-hat and the clap. And then I can essentially just copy this and use this throughout all the drops. I might even have the shaker go through the break as well. And I'll copy that, pop that there. And then I'll have the shaker come back in there as well. So this is just providing that basic layout. And then here for the outro, we'll have that and that. So on the outro, which starts here, we'll have the open hat and clap come out. So it's just the shaker loop and the rolling hi-hat, and then to end just the shaker loop there. So that's essentially where I would start with my tracks, is just the main percussion, getting the really bare bones foundation of the track. And then that allows us to have our finishing point to then go through and add in all those other elements. But of course, I've already got some main elements here, so I might as well just chuck them in as well. So we'll go with these synths. I just want these synths to be in the first drop here, and they can just go all the way through. And I might actually have these fade in this first break. And then I'm going to want to have some sort of crossover in the second break as well. So I can maybe have those there. And then I'll chuck something like a filter on them. So filter them in here and then filter them out here at the end of the drop. Then the vocals, them to come in the drop there. Don't actually need them at the start there now. And then I can just duplicate them over so they can be in the first half of the drop. And then I have this idea in my head to kind of chop them up in the second half of the drop and then add a bunch of little other synths going on for that bit there. So I'll just leave them intact in the first half of the drop there. And then what I'll do as well, because in the original idea, I had the vocals kind of doing this sort of thing. Cool, so that's basically the first half of the drop there. And then for the sweeps, I'm just going to pop these just at the start of the drop, because I'm obviously going to add in a lot more of these, but these are going to get added on kind of later down the track. So for now, I'm just going to pop them there. And then I might actually move this uplifter just to the right here. And yeah, we'll go through kind of this stuff further down the track. It's probably going to be a couple more episodes in, because we've got to, like I said, go through and add those main elements into the intro. Main elements, although the main elements are sort of already in the break there, but we'll have to add some extra stuff. Then we'll focus on this first drop here in another episode. Then we'll focus on this break here and the build up going into the second drop. And then we'll focus on the final drop there, where we'll be adding in some new stuff. So same with these ear candy kind of percussion sounds. I'm just going to leave these in the intro for now, and they'll be kind of repeating throughout the track, and you'll see how that works later on. Then these little effect sounds here, I'll just pop them in the first drop for now, and I'll duplicate them over for the whole drop. So that's just that same kind of little pattern that I went through in the first couple of episodes, or in the effects episode. Now they're just placed in the drop. So the first drop in its kind of bare form sounds like this. Duplicate that reverse clap, just have that repeating over the whole second drop. Whole first drop, I mean. Cool. So now we got our basic layout. There's a couple of elements already in here, so that's going to make the following few episodes a little bit easier. But in the next episode, we're going to be going through that intro, adding in all those main synth elements there, really starting to flesh the track out. So I'll see you guys in the next episode.